Welcome to the Specialty Coffee Association online training. The SCA represents a global community of coffee enthusiasts and professionals who are devoted to continuous learning and always improving the practices of our industry. It is my goal through SCA.Training to share with as many people as possible the incredible resources created by the SCA via 6 specialty coffee certifications. These include Introduction to Coffee, Green Coffee, Roasting, Sensory Analysis, Brewing, and Barista Skills. These modules are offered in 3 levels of expertise: Foundation, Intermediate, and Professional. Today's course content comes from the SCA Green Coffee Foundation level. I'll start off with some theory and knowledge designed specifically around the requirements presented in both the SCA Green Coffee written exam and the practical assessment. These 2 exams must be taken in person with a certified AST trainer before you can earn certification for this module. When you're ready to take your exam, I'll be more than happy to make sure you get a place at the next certification event. There's so much more great content that we don't have time to present in just one lesson. So if you grasp a truly holistic understanding of specialty coffee, or if you'd like to, please consider spending some more time on SCA.Training and try to look at the other modules: Introduction to Coffee, Roasting, Sensory Skills, Brewing, and Barista. After that, you'll be more than ready to start taking your exams and advancing into further content at the intermediate and professional level. After the theory is finished, we can walk through some of the written or practical examination expectations. So I look forward to helping you on your path toward specialty coffee certification with the SCA. Thanks for being part of the journey. Now, here are some of the general details for our course as provided by the Specialty Coffee Association. The purpose of this module is to ensure that a foundation level of knowledge and skill is achieved in order to understand the basic concepts surrounding green coffee, from growing through processing, shipping, storage, arrival at a roastery, etc. The course is ideally suited for people who are new to the coffee industry, or for those who are looking to start gaining more insight into the broad subject matter of green coffee. Of course, green coffee touches everything we do in the specialty coffee industry. It's recommended but not required that prior to taking this exam, you sit the Introduction to Coffee course and you try to pass that exam. But again, this isn't a prerequisite module. Now, some of the practical and written content that you'll be presented with and tested on includes coffee botany, origins, coffee farming and harvesting, coffee processing and different grading methods, coffee sorting, defects, coffee storage and transportation, the process of decaffeination, and coffee contracts, maybe some trading concepts, as well as coffee global production statistics. Now, the practical exam out of 100%, the practical exam does require 100% or a basic understanding and ability to perform all practical exam requirements. And then the written exam requires at least 60% to pass. This course is worth 5 coffee diploma system points. All right, this is where we need to start: green coffee, because it's where the magic starts. So, how many of you might be able to say, before taking a class like this, what country the Coffea Arabica is indigenous to? That's right, Ethiopia. And perhaps some of you have heard of a goat story that started in Ethiopia, some say between 600 and 700 AD. Well, it just so happens that there was a goat farmer, and so the story goes, he was herding his goats, he was moving them along from mountain to valley, and recognized some strange behavior one day. One evening, the goats wouldn't go to sleep. They were very wild and lively, and this continued for some time. Of course, the farmer, the shepherd, was not too happy about losing his sleep, and his overly anxious goats. So he decided to figure out what they were eating, stumbled upon the coffee plant, coffee fruit, and so really the concept would be the introduction of caffeine via the plant, the leaves, the fruit. Later stories also go into how the coffee cherry was dried and made into tea, and then of course how the seed or the coffee bean inside was dried and roasted and ground and brewed for coffee. But many early drinks from coffee did include the fruit mucilage, so a coffee tea was made out of the fruit. Well, stories aside, what we do know about coffee as a fruit is that it is what we call a cherry. So the fruit kind of looks like a cherry or maybe a cranberry, depending on fruit that you're familiar with. And here we can see inside of our coffee fruit. Now, this isn't really on the exam at the foundation level, but I think it's really interesting to know, and again, it gives a great foundation for understanding where all the wonderful and complex flavors and the variety of coffee comes from. So most cherries will bear 2 seeds inside their fruit. However, some are rare or slightly malnourished, and they only bear 1 small round seed inside, which we call a pea berry. So if it doesn't have those 2 equal seeds left and right, it might just have 1 round seed on the center, which we call a pea berry. As you follow from the, let's see, on our picture there, as you follow from the outside, 7, toward the inside, 1, you will see the parchment, number 7, and that's the husk that protects the fruit. 6, we move to mucilage. That's the fruit that feeds the seed, right? The whole purpose of fruit is to bear a seed, which can reproduce a plant. Moving next, 5, there's a thin skin that protects the embryo, which we call silver skin. And then moving on further, we have the actual bean, which holds the embryo. And moving even closer, we have the embryo. I apologize there. I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, when in fact there are 7 layers. So I'm just going to keep on moving. There are great visuals and pictures online as well. And I should insert right here, this is a PowerPoint that I had used and adapted from a lot of training that I conducted in China. So you will see some Chinese characters on it as well. However, I've tried to remove most of the characters. I just haven't changed all of the pictures. So for those who do speak Chinese or are interested, that's just bonus. Now a little bit more on the coffee fruit. Notice on the bottom right, that picture, the first silver skin will remain on the coffee, especially when you find it in lighter roast. Okay, so for the most part, this is insignificant in our brewing, although large amounts of silver skin in a finished batch of coffee should be avoided. Typically, the roaster or roasting methods and the machine should be inspected if you're finding a lot of silver skins in your coffee. It can also depend on processing or origin. And then right of the silver skin pictured is parchment. Now the parchment is much harder. It's kind of shell-like, and it's a casing originally protecting the coffee seed from the mucilage outside. The parchment should be fully removed during the milling or hulling process, as we will discuss later. So if you're finding parchment in your coffees, in your green coffee, you should definitely remove it before roasting, because when it's in the roaster, it'll burn, that smoke and that small fire. It can kind of create a quality defect or a taint in your final coffee that you're consuming. Now it's important to be able to describe some of the basic flavor characteristics of our 2 main coffee species. And so when we talk about coffee, you'll hear the word species, you'll hear varieties. Now let's be very clear here. There are kind of 2 main species that we really always see. There are a few more species that are very rare, but those 2 would be Arabica and Robusta. So in general, we can make these comparisons listed above. You'll see that Arabica should be noted as a coffee that is higher in acidity. It's It's more ovular shaped. It has a kind of a citrus floral profile to it, flavors, lower caffeine levels as compared to Robusta. The Arabica plant is grown in higher elevations, and typically the seed will have a green bluish coloration on the raw bean. So here we have an Arabica green coffee on the left and a Robusta green unroasted coffee on the right, although you can see it's more of a yellowish brown. And then on the right hand side, Robusta, earthy kind of flavors and aromas, a rounder shape. Okay, bitterness will be higher perceived bitterness. This is both from caffeine and from other contents in the bean. It should have a lower acidity in general than the Arabica. The plant will grow at lower elevations, so you can harvest the fruit as well in different countries or different regions closer to sea level. And it'll be more brown in coloration on that raw bean, that unroasted bean. And we're going to talk about global production statistics. That'll come up more than once, and it is important to know. Generally, and a good statistic to hold on to is that world production of Arabica is greater than Robusta. And that's because the demand is greater. But Arabica coffees typically are give or take 60% of global production, and Robusta is give or take 40%. Now that can change annually, but in general 60-40, with Arabica being more widely produced. And if you have the chance, a lot of people haven't tasted Robusta coffee, so I really do encourage you to find a sample and try it. It's typically blended with coffees and espressos, but if you can find some to brew up, have a try. All right, this is a popular photo. I want to give Cafe Imports props for their great work. Now, the coffee species, this Rubiaceae, coffee is part of this Rubiaceae species, which is, if you study botany, if you go back into a species of plants, that is a twin leaf, twin seed, fruit-bearing shrub species. Okay, so it's getting more technical there, and you don't need to know that for your exam, especially at foundation level. But you'll find other plants in the world that also have the twin leaf with a twin seed with a fruit-bearing shrub appearance. So that's just kind of the family that coffee falls into. Today we find three major strands of the Rubiaceae species, and we already talked about the two most common, which should be committed to memory. Robusta, or as we see on the right, Canephora. Now the word Canephora is used interchangeably with Robusta, and it's widely grown in fields at lower elevation. It's a more robust plant, hence the name Robusta. Now Coffee Arabica is typically grown at higher elevations with more specific growing temperatures, maybe not such a wide range. And we won't get into those at the foundation level, but you can see how the Arabica has branched and includes many varieties, and then the Robusta off to the right has lesser varieties. But then in between, the purple and the orange, there is some overlap, and naturally, Robusta plants, Robusta species and Arabica species have cross-pollinated, or they've influenced fruit in various regions where they both grew together. And then on the left-hand side, very rare, but maybe at times 1 to 2% of global production might be accounted for in Liberica trees. And these are mostly grown wild, and they're more rare, growing in few countries. But the Liberica is the third main species, so Liberica, Arabica, Canephora, Robusta.